Hey everybody, welcome to February. It's a beautiful 80 degrees here in Dallas, Texas. Well, actually it is. It's actually fantastic weather. I love living down here in the South in the wintertime because I don't have to shovel any snow. But anyways, February, here we are, 1 year into this. This is the 12th VTS. Can you believe it? It's been a year already? I can't. Time's flying. It's crazy. It's nuts. We've gone through a whole lot of stuff. We have worked through pose and all the things about poses and about timing and as many things as I could think of about timing. And there's a few more things that we'll get to, but I felt like we'll save them for later. But I really wanted to talk about the basic constructions of pose and timing and all the things that relate to them, because they are the tools that we use to express what we're going to be talking about from here forward. And that's the whole idea of what animation to me really is. Early on in animation, a little history for you guys, it was just neat to see things move. Rubber hosey, woo, look, it's moving. Swaying flowers, singing songs, and we thought, wow, that's great, you know, look at that, singing flowers, it's fantastic. But audiences soon grew tired of just watching things move. And there came a point, somewhere in the late 20s and early 30s, where you had to kind of get an idea across, where people wanted a story. And so I don't really care what kind of animation you're in, whether it's flash animation, hand-drawn, CG, feature film, direct-to-video, television, internet animation, game animation, it doesn't matter. The whole thing is about telling some kind of a story. And if it isn't about telling a story, then you're just a motion technician, and I feel sad for you, because you've got to find something that's worth saying. If you don't have something worth saying, well, why are we getting up in front of the microphone and saying, hey everybody, look what I have to say? So we're going to talk for several months about acting and a lot of things that go into that. And then from that will be a natural outflow into talking about how to plan for a scene and then how to actually get these things worked into our work. So for this month for sure, we're not going to be doing any screen capture time, because it's important to talk about the basics of what we're getting after. Next month we may or may not have some screen capture time of me working inside a 3D environment. Again, it depends if the subject needs it or not. But for this, for today, I really want to, and for this month, I really want us to get our heads around the idea of what it's like and what it really means to be an animator. Okay? So, and it's the only topic I have for today, because this is bedrock stuff. This is foundational for what I think is important in being an animator. This is the whole point of the deal. And if you miss this month, a lot of the things that I say in months future really aren't going to mean a whole lot. Well, they'll mean stuff. I mean, I take that back. It'll be useful. But I really want to give you guys the mindset that I have when I come to my work as an animator, so that you can kind of see where I'm coming from and why I make the decisions I make, so that later on, as I make these decisions, you can refer back to February VTS12 and say, oh yeah, I remember him saying that such and such, so that's why he's doing this. And I'll try and remember as I go through it to explain what I'm doing and why I'm doing it as I do stuff in future months, like breaking down a sound file and working out, you know, what kinds of poses you're going to use and where to hit your beats and, you know, how to work your emotional gestures and all these things inside of it. I'm going to try and come back to this point and explain it, but this is stuff to remember. So get out your notebooks and just get ready for a good old honkin' lecture. What is animation? You ask a lot of different people, you'll get all different kinds of answers. You can read The Illusion of Life, and they'll say animation is, you know, the appearance of bringing things to life. You talk to a guy who's a traditional animator, he may say it's all about the drawings. You talk to a CG guy, and he may say it's about this, that, or the other. Talk to a games guy, he says it's this. You talk to a flash guy, he says it's this. What is animation? You could say it is the act on our part as artists, animation artists, to bring life to an inanimate object. Sorta. But that's really a description of the symptom, not the cause. Okay? There is a certain amount of causality, so I want to bring life to this inanimate object. Well, that begs the question, why? I mean, why do you want to bring life to an inanimate object? I mean, I'm kind of glad that the trees don't sing and dance when I walk by them. That would kind of freak me out. I'm kind of glad that my car doesn't have a mind of its own. Well, some days it does. But I'm glad that most of the time my car does not have a mind of its own. I'm glad that bunnies aren't mischievous to the point that they want to blow me up. So why do we want to bring life to an inanimate object? It begs the question, why? Well, obviously, we got stories we want to tell. Why tell stories? Backing up even further. It's like I said, have something worth saying. Stories are as old a tradition as mankind. It's been around since we've been around. And you have the storytellers are oftentimes those who shape the culture. And you take a look at the most influential people in history, they're oftentimes storytellers. One of the most, well, people don't think of him this way, but one of the most incredible storytellers was Jesus Christ himself. The guy, whether you believe in him or not and what he said, if you read the New Testament and through the Gospels, you'll see the guy's always telling stories. That's all he does, it seems. People ask him a question and he answers with a story. People say, well, what's this like? And he gives them a story. People say, what's the weather like today? And he gives them a story. He's always talking in stories because he knew that we think in terms of stories and we're going to communicate ideas. Now, some folks just use story as a great way to make a lot of money. And you know what? They're going to make a lot of money, especially if they have a good story to tell. But I think stories oftentimes have a reason for being. What are we saying to each other? What values are we encouraging in each other? What truths are we reinforcing? What questions are we raising? Story, from the very basic nursery rhyme, is about a lot of different things. Some folks can say story is the telling of a series of events. That's pretty much what a nursery rhyme is. There's not much to it. Itsy bitsy spider went up the water spout. Down came the rain, washed the spider out. Out came the sun, dried up all the rain. Itsy bitsy spider went up the spout again. That's a nursery rhyme. Okay? You can even sing a little song. Itsy bitsy spider, a little beep, beep, beep. What's the point of that story? There isn't one. But we sing it and we tell it to the kids and the little toddlers when it's nighttime or when we want them to be happy because stories connect with us. We're a story creature. And so, that's the basic level story, an unfolding of events. There's no motivation to it. There's no character to it, really. It's just A, B, C, D, all the way up through Z, and then you're done. The next level of story is where we see a moment, and as we get closer to the protagonist, so that's the abstract, the total disconnect of personal involvement is a telling of events. Next level is, say, maybe a background character, is capturing the moment in the life of a person. Okay? What does that mean? Could be anything. If there's a background character and he's walking to the store, that's that moment in that guy's life. He may only be in your picture for 37 frames, but he's there, and that's his moment in his life. And you got to think, what's that moment like? And then as you go further in and further in, you get to the protagonist, where you're coming to a point where the best stories are when the main character, the one with whom the audience identifies the most, has a change in worldview. I mean, his whole concept of what life is switches. Doors are opened in his mind. Possibilities are made aware to him. Things that he formerly thought were bad are now good, or the other way around. He's seeing the world in a broader light of truth, okay? A great example is Toy Story, okay? Woody is king of the Andy room, and the whole world kind of revolves around Woody being boss, okay? In comes the brand new toy, Buzz, and now Woody has to deal with a new reality. Is he going to be a better man for it or a worse man for it? Or a better toy or a worse toy? Well, that's the question. That's the story. Story is, a lot of times, asking of subsequent questions and then answering them. Okay? We ask the question, will the beast ever find true love to become back into the prince? Well, that's the primary question of Beauty and the Beast, right? All the other things are questions that are asked as a result of that. So, that little sidebar on story lets us know that, again, I don't really care what kind of animation you're doing, what the style is, what the delivery medium is, or anything. If it's not about story, you're a motion technician, and I feel sorry for you. Because being a motion technician is dull. It's boring. There's no point in me just I make it move because it looks good moving. That's not enough of a reason to sit and suffer through this stuff, for me anyways. I have no patience for just making things move. I have to be telling a story. And I trust that for most animators, that's equally as true. Okay, so what is animation if it's not just bringing life to an inanimate object? That's too sterile of a definition. And it begs the question, why? And the why is story, and story is what we're all about. So what really is animation? What's story? Well, story is, again, relating something about a person that's inside of them. Okay? The question in Toy Story is an internal question for Woody. The question in Beauty and the Beast is an internal question for Beast. Will Beast find true love and become the prince that he once was? Well, that's a pretty interior idea. That's a very esoteric idea. How do you show that? Well, that's what animation is. Animation is the outward expression of inner realities for our characters. Okay? I'm going to say that again. We'll slow it down. Animation, in my eyes, is the outward expression through body and motion and action and whatever of the internal realities in mind and heart and soul of our characters. Whether they're a minor character who's only in your film for one scene, or it's your primary character around which the entire narrative hinges. Doesn't matter if it's a bit part or the main part. That's what animation is. And when you understand that, it starts opening up doors of understanding as to, well, how would I approach this scene? The first question you need to ask is, what is the internal reality for this character? So what do I mean by internal reality? Well, internal reality is, well, think about it. It's thought. It's feeling, it's heart, it's worldview, it's beliefs, it's faith, it's all the things that make us uniquely people and not make us uniquely fish or not uniquely fish. Hey, fish may have dreams, I don't know. But I've had goldfish before and they look about as smart as a rock. They just swim around and eat. I don't think there's a whole lot going on there. Look at a chicken. I don't think anybody's home with a chicken. A chicken has so little brain that you could cut its head off and it still functions. It runs around, okay? So I'm not sure a whole lot's going on in a chicken, but I know that in every person I see in life, something's going on. In their thoughts, in their minds, in their hearts, in their beliefs, in all these things. So that's what the internal reality is. So ask yourself this question. What is the internal reality for this person at this time in this place? Okay, sounds like a simple question, but if you don't even know what to listen for the answers, you might get confused, okay? Now, we've talked a lot, and most animation training is about the externals, okay? External or outward expression of internal reality. Most animation training is focusing on, and VTS up to this point has been focusing on, the external or outward expression. What's a pose? What's a breakdown? Good arcs, clear staging, nice overlap, anticipations, moving holds. All those things are a lot of the focus of animation training because it's hard to get that stuff figured out. And if you don't get that stuff figured out, you're not going to be able to say anything clearly. Going back to my handwriting expression or handwriting analogy or metaphor or simile, I'm not sure which one it is. I can't remember. I'm butchering English. But you have something to say, and then you have to have the ability to say it well, and then you have to have the ability to write it in a sentence structure that makes sense, and then you have to have the ability to have good handwriting so when somebody reads it, they can actually tell what you're saying. A lot of the focus of animation training is on handwriting. How to say something in a way that people can understand what you're saying. What we're going to get into now, and what we're into now, and what we're going to be into for the next good while is, what are we going to say? Okay? So, outward expression of internal realities is what animation is. Pose, gesture, timing, overlap, arcs, offsets, silhouettes, that stuff is not animation. Okay? I know that's heresy. I know Illusion of Life said that stuff's part of animation. It's part of, but it is not animation. These are merely tools of the craft to give us the ability to express outwardly an inner reality. Okay? I hope I'm not confusing you here. Pose, timing, arc, All those things we talk about, they are not animation. No more so than a hammer, a saw, a piece of wood, a ruler is a house. It's not. They are tools to build a house in which we can live. Pose and arc and timing and all these things, the external focus of animation is not animation. They are merely tools to build a story in which our hearts can dwell. Okay? That's a pretty important distinction, because if you get caught up, well, I got to work this, and we'll do it. I do it all the time. Oh, I got to work this pose, or I got to do this. If you make the pose, or if you make the timing, or if you make the thing become the focus of what you're doing, you're going to lose track of what you're trying to say. And if you lose track of what you're trying to say, then you'll have some very pretty stuff, but it'll be very empty. It'll be like eating a marshmallow. Tastes good for a little bit, but doesn't fill you up, and too much of it, you're not too good. Okay? So, remember, pose, gesture, timing, arcs, offsets, the 12 principles, not animation, merely tools of the craft to get to the heart of animation, which is the outward expression of internal realities to tell a story. So how do we do that? Change. Change is the thing that allows us to see what's going on inside. Okay? We capture a moment, and then from that moment, we move to another moment. Or we capture that internal reality, and then something happens inside of the character by a moment, scene by scene basis, moment by moment basis. Something happens inside that character. They think a new thought, they feel a new feeling, they have a new desire, they have a new bubble of gas in their stomach from the pizza they ate. Something happens inside of them that causes them to express that through an outward change. So animation is the art of using change. Change is a tool. Pose and timing and all that stuff. Change is the tool to show that inner reality. Okay? So you go from thoughts, which lead oftentimes to emotions, which then leads to action. All right? People, Ed Hooks is big on this, acting trainer guy who does a lot of animation stuff, wrote a couple of books. Sweet guy, love Ed. Ed's a great guy. Ed, if you're watching, how you doing? But Ed says people don't act on thoughts, they act on emotions. And to a certain degree, that's very true. Thoughts lead to emotions, lead to actions. Change is shown in stillness versus motion. That's our stock and trade, stillness and motion. All these things, the tools of animation, the 12 principles, all those things, they are merely tools of the craft to allow us to show change via stillness, pose, or motion, timing, arc, offset, yada, yada, yada. Pose is the essence of stillness, and all the other stuff is the substance of motion. Okay? And subsequent poses give us the illusion of that motion and allow us to work through these things, but in and of themselves, they need some more. So that's why we have the stuff of motion. All right? So animation, again, backing up at outward expression, internal realities. We show this by change. Change, our stock and trade, is stillness versus motion. When you ask the question, what is the internal reality for this person at this time, in this place, in telling this story, in this world, you have to be expecting one answer. And that's it. There's really only one internal reality that functions for all people, especially in narratives. Now, I mean, not maybe on the street where you're walking on the street, because we're pretty complex beings, but in the form and function of narrative, of telling a story, most of the time, 99.9999,000 time, there's one answer. Okay? Here is the first and last rule of internal realities for characters anywhere. We have a want or a need for something that we do not possess. This, in turn, creates an emotional reaction. That reaction causes us to try and answer it. Whether we try to answer it by denying the emotional reaction, or by fulfilling the emotional reaction, or finding a new emotional reaction to offset that one. Okay? So, first and last rule of internal realities is, we want or we need something we do not have. This creates an emotional response, and we in our bodies show this and act towards answering it. Okay? That's the best way I can think of putting it. And it's a good thing. So when you ask the question, what is the internal reality for this character at this moment in time and in this place? Ask yourself, what does this character want or need right now that they do not have? That's the first one. And then the second question is, how do they feel about it? Okay? What does this person or character want or need that they do not have right now? Write that down. When you get a scene, figure it out, analyze it. What do they want? What do they need? What is it that they don't have that they need or want? And what is the emotional reaction to that? Okay? If you're an attention hog and nobody's paying attention to you, you want or need attention and you're not getting it. What's your emotional reaction? Indignant? That's a good one maybe. Angry? Impatient? Sad? Lonely? Start thinking about it. Start thinking about all the possibilities, okay? I have a broken arm. I want or need comfort from this pain. How does that make me feel? Well, if comfort is close by, it makes me feel hopeful. If comfort has arrived, it makes me feel relieved. If comfort is nowhere to be seen, it makes me feel desolate and desperate. If comfort is denied by another, it makes me feel angry. Okay? So you find out what it is they want or they need that they do not have. Then, how does that make them feel? And the question is, why can't they have it? And the why will give you the why they feel that way. Okay? Because, as I just said, if I have a broken arm and I'm in pain, I have a single desire, comfort from that pain, but I have a myriad, an endless variety of possible emotional reactions to it, simply because the question is, why can't I have it? Who's denying me of it? What situations are denying me of it? What instances? You just take a look at the moment, get inside of that person, and say, okay, they want or need. The best thing to do is identify their want or need, ask why they can't have it, find out the emotional reaction. From the emotional reaction, the next step is, what are they going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? Okay, I have a broken arm. I am in pain. I want or need comfort from the pain. Why can't I have it? Because the villain in this story has denied me of it. What does that make me feel? Angry. What am I going to do about it? Well, right now I got a broken arm. I'm not going to do much. But I'm going to decide in my mind and in my heart that I'm going to kill that guy as soon as I can. And that drives everything else I do for the rest of the story, at least until that question is answered. Now, it's not a great story. Revenge isn't exactly a good motive, but it's a valid human response. Okay? So, what do you want? Do you want respect? Nobody's giving it to you? Well, why aren't they giving it to you? Maybe because they think they're better than you. Well, if they think they're better than you, then what does that make you feel? It usually makes you feel angry. So what are you going to do about it? Well, one way to respond is you're going to earn the respect. You're going to do better at something that they think you're not good at. Or you're going to demand their respect, either through violence or through oppression. Like I said, from that one want or need, there's an endless variety of possibilities. You need to find what works for your character in that moment. Okay? If you're looking for a chart of possible emotional responses to why a want or need is denied, I can't give that to you. You want to look around you, look at the world, look at your friends and neighbors, look at yourself. That's where observation comes in. What is it really about? What are we really about as people? Okay? Get into that position, and that's where our intuition as animators, our internal acting ability, is really just the ability to understand and intuit and observe and sympathize and empathize with how a person would feel in a given situation. And that's a very key tool in our toolbox. It's actually the very core of how we approach our job. When I get a scene and I ask that question, what do they want or need that they can't have? Why can't they have it? How do they feel? That how do they feel question is oftentimes going to be, how would I feel? Knowing what I know about the rest of this world. A lot of times the director is going to tell me how they feel. In a good handoff, they probably will tell you how they feel. And then from that, it's up to you to determine, how does that look like? What does that look like? Well, he wants to get to the princess in the tower. He can't get to the princess in the tower because the villain has cut his rope. And he's angry yet determined. Okay? Those are handoff notes from a director. And if you get that much, you're doing really good. So the director gives you that, and you're like, okay, I got it. It's your job to figure out now, what does that look like? Okay? What does that look like? What does that mean? How does that play itself out? What series of stillness versus motion is going to give me the impression, that illusion of life, that moment, that spark that says this guy wants to get the girl in the tower. It's clear. He's mad and determined. That's clear. And then he's going to do something from that point forward. And that also has to be clear. Animation, there's a lot going on. The internal realities are expressed through outward emotion. Change is our stock in trade. Stillness versus motion. That question on the inside, what do they want or need? What's the emotional response? What are they going to do to answer that emotional response? Hey, maybe a guy who's trying to be a better person responds by trying to deny or ignore the emotional response. I mean, that's part of a lot of what a lot of us are about. You know, if you're an Irish guy, you got a quick temper. Okay? I know what that's like. I'm a bit Irish. And somebody says something to you and the immediate reaction is like, you son of a... Well, you know, that's going to get you beat up in life pretty quick, because what you're doing is kicking off other people's emotional responses. So what do we try to do? What's self-improvement? It's all about trying to deny emotional responses. There's a certain conflict there, isn't there? That's ripe, wonderful stuff for storytelling. It's real. It's what we do as people. We want to be better. I don't want to hit that guy in the face when he tells me to get lost. Okay, that's what I want to do, but I don't want to do it. Ooh, what's my answer to that emotional response? Okay, so whether we're going to fulfill the emotional response, I love the girl and I want to kiss her. Well, if it's a young lady you're dating and you're single, go for it. If you're middle age and you're married and it's a teenage girl who's babysitting your kids, you're going to have a struggle. At least you ought to have a struggle. Okay? So, what are you going to do with it? The emotional response is there. The answer is how we act it out. And then our job is to show that. Okay. Animation is showing that answer. Okay? That's another way of saying outward expression of internal realities, or showing how a character or a person answers the internal emotional response to something they cannot have or need, or do not have or need. Maybe not cannot. That's a wrong word. Okay, this is pretty esoteric stuff. Hopefully you're following along. If it's a little too nutty, back it up, watch it again, take notes, because this is stuff I do. When every scene I get, these are the questions I ask myself. Oftentimes it only takes me 5 minutes to go through it. It's taking me about 45 minutes to explain it. But these are the things that are happening inside my mind when I get a scene, or when I'm making a short film, or I'm writing a story, or whenever I got a moment that I have to show what's going on with a character, these are the things I'm doing. What is the outward expression of the internal reality? What's the internal reality? Internal reality is he wants X. Why can't he have X? Why is X denied him? Who's denied it? Okay, emotional response Y. All right, emotional response Y. Actions to answer emotional response Z. What does that look like? Okay, now I can start getting into the tools of the trade, of the construction of what that looks like. Pose is the stillness. Well, I said that before, and I spent a lot of time talking about pose because pose captures in an instant, in an illustrative moment. Just like an illustration or a snapshot photograph, in one image you can capture a hugely complex array of internal realities in a character. Emotion. You can, in one well-taken photo, you can show the conflict You can show the desire or the needs. You can show the emotional response to not having it. I mean, you can show everything in one image. That's why photography is so very powerful, because it's capturing just that right moment when something's going on inside of a person, and we can see it. It's written all over their face. It's written all over their body. That's what pose is, okay? There's two kinds of poses, really. There's the acting pose, which is what I just talked about. The stillness, that one communicated idea, the stillness that captures the internal reality that's going on. Is it a struggle inside? How do they feel? What do they want? All that is shown in their face, in their body, in everything. And it's bam, right there. As soon as you see it, you know what it is. If you're good, if we're good as animators, as soon as the audience sees it, they'll know exactly what it is. All right? That's a real challenge. You'll spend a lifetime trying to get that good. I'm not that good yet. But we'll spend a whole lifetime trying to be that good. But that's the goal, is in one frame to let the world know, just looking at it, oh, that guy's lonely. Wow. That's what you were going for. So that's an acting pose. The stillness of the internal reality, it is. The action pose are the various things that go into the answer, how to play it out, okay? So if the guy's going to run, or if he's walking, walking, you're going to have, the heel plant pose, the passing pose, the other heel plant pose, the up and down pose. You have all these various subparts of the action. Now, there is acting in there as well, because, and we're going to get into this next month for sure, but you're not going to just go ahead and play an action default for any old moment, okay? If a guy is sad, he's going to walk a certain way. He's not going to be sad and then walk neutral and arrive someplace sad. It looks ridiculous. It just doesn't work, okay? So action poses still communicate this internal reality. It's just they're used in showing motion, okay? Acting pose, stillness. Action pose, motion. In both of them, you're still communicating the internal realities of the character and expressing them. Okay, so that's a lot of stuff to gather and get your head around. That's why I didn't really want to do anything in the computer this month, because it's just too much. This is foundational stuff, okay? These are the questions you have to ask yourself when you're getting a scene or animating, even if you're in games and they say, do a walk cycle for this character. Ask these questions. I don't know. I don't know if they're going to care. They may, if the creative directors for the game should care, and they should be giving you the ability to do these sorts of things in your games, because I'm just going to tell you, if games don't keep up in the narrative sense of things, especially in animation, you're going to find that people aren't going to like them too much anymore, because games are, it's about gameplay, but I think what makes it a more immersive experience, what enhances gameplay, is if people can connect with what's going on. So, what does it look like when that monster has to do a hurt walk cycle? Well, ask the questions. What does that hurt monster want? How is he going to get it? What does he feel about not having what he wants? These questions will work for everything. Even comedy. In fact, you can use this stuff for cartoony comedy like crazy, because then all you're doing is just jacking up a lot of these concepts. And take a look at Go for Broke, a short film that I worked on when I was at Blur. When I was boarding that with Jeff Fowler, the guy who wrote it and ended up directing it, we were boarding it back and forth, and I was cutting together the narrative of it in the animatic. We're always coming back to, well, what does this guy want? What does he want right here? Okay, he wants this. All right, how does he feel about that? So he wants the food. The corn comes down. The corn he wants, but he can't have because the chicken got to it first. Okay, what does he feel? What does he want to do? Well, he's angry, so he wants to chase the chicken off. He did all the work. He didn't get the reward. So, these are, And you can just play this out for serious stuff. You can play this out for comedy. You can play it out in games. You can play it out in everything, from the smallest, most insignificant character in the background to the lead character of the show. It's you ask these questions and try and find ways to communicate externally these internal realities and find those internal realities. All right, so where does that mean we go from here? Well, one of the things that people oftentimes have difficulty doing is figuring out, well, what pose should I use? Or what does a gesture look like? Or what's the right way to... I get this question all the time. What's the right way to show this emotion? Well, all of it, none of it. There isn't a right way. Well, there is, but there isn't a wrong way. Well, there is, but there isn't. You know what I'm saying? What's the right way to show, I don't know, loneliness? There's lots of ways to show loneliness. All it's important is that the way you show loneliness is true for that moment and that character and that time. So, one of the things we're going to study all next month, in our video next month, is we're going to just take a look at how to build pose/gesture that is sincere. A lot of times, you'll see a beginning animator and they'll just hit a pose for every beat of the accent, and I call it the 10-second club syndrome. 10-second club is a great place to learn because it's a lot like getting work. You get a scene, you get audio, but when we lack experience, sometimes we want to do too much. We're trying to stick a pose on every beat, and I had the same problem when I was a beginner. Trust me, I would send stuff to the animator at Pixar, and he'd say, too many poses, rip them out. You're going too crazy. Okay. What do I know? I'm dumb. I'm new. Okay. So what we're going to talk about next month is, it's not a formula, but it's a way of thinking that will help you start building realistic, or not realistic, I hate that word, sincere, believable, real for the internal realities, expressions of that emotion. Okay? It's gonna be a fun little exercise, and you're gonna start to see how, when we put it all together, it really starts having all kinds of possibilities. I mean, the permutations of ability to show lots of different things are all it's just crazy. So we're going to do that next month. I'm really looking forward to it. I hope this month was useful to you. I know I talked the whole time. I know I didn't draw. I didn't do any, in-screen stuff. And some folks really don't like it when I talk the whole time. But I really feel like this month I had to talk the whole time because it's a foundation for what we're going to do. And so if you didn't like listening to me, or you thought, I don't want to look at him the whole time, stick with it. Next month, we're going to get into stuff that's going to be far more illustrative. And then the following months, we get into way more illustrative stuff, like how do you break down a sound file? How do you break down an audio track to figure out what's the energy of it? And then what's the internal reality? And then how do I want to represent that? And we're going to get into that stuff. And then we're going to get into, okay, how do I use screen space to give space to different emotional realities? And that's really deep stuff. That's stuff that's really fun to use when you start thinking about, well, how can I assign a space, a physical space, to an emotion? And that's going to be fun stuff to get into. So anyways, we got months and months of this stuff. It's going to be great. This is the fun stuff. All the other stuff we talked about, and pose and the timing, and that's fun, but that's talking about, what kind of tools do we have? Oh, I got a 17-volt Makita drill bit. I'm not a tool guy. I don't even know what that is. Oh, I got a pneumatic hammer. Talking about all that stuff is talking about our tools. Now we're talking about what kind of house we want to build. And it's the fun stuff. So anyways, thanks for being a part of this. I think you guys are great. The feedback is awesome. The support has been awesome. After doing this for a year, I can say I'm having a blast. I'm having a lot of fun. You guys, through your kind generosity, are allowing me and my wife to do some things we really want to do. And I thank you for it. I thank you for being a part of it, for being patient, for putting up with me when things don't work right. Y'all are just great. I really thank you for it. I hope you're getting your $15 a month worth out of this. Sometimes I feel guilty charging even that much, but there you go. So anyhow, be good to each other this month. All the best. God bless, and we'll see you next time.